Good morning, seminar students. Good to see you. I just wanted to spend a couple minutes organizing what's going to be happening in RWLD this week. One of the things, if you think about it, an RWLD is very similar to a flipped classroom. It gives you the information and things like that that you should look at before class. Of course, that means it has to be posted before class. I understand that part. But one of the things they talk about is that with RWLDs, that they're more effective if the teachers actually are, usually in our when you talk about a flipped classroom is set up where you watch a teacher's lecture. And what I have here is a whole variety of materials. And so what we're trying out this semester is we're trying to kind of tie the materials together using a video of the teacher. I'm doing this in this class, and then I'm also doing it in my Ed Tech and Design class. And who knows, I must admit that I'm using the YouTube editor, and it makes it all so simple that I might be doing it all over the place. You might see lots of pictures of me, which may be for the good, maybe not. Anyway, what I wanted to do is I wanted to go through and kind of give you an overview of what we're talking about here. This week, you're going to be writing your introduction. And the introduction is really a very important part. But please, remember this. There are certain parts that need to be in the introduction. You need to pay attention to those parts that are in the introduction. You'll see those in the manuscript, or in the template once you download it. It has a list of the parts that need to be in the introduction. Plus, I have some things on the RWLD that will give you some information on that. And as we go through, the 9th chapter of Galvin's book is a good one to get started with as to how that's all put together. There's some materials here where we're talking about the composition of a literature review. And believe it or not, I even have a couple songs there that deal with how to write a paragraph. I've noticed that in some cases people don't understand what a paragraph is. Some people think it's just a block of text. Consider a paragraph as something where you have a bucket, and inside that bucket is where you put these sentences that all have to do with the same thing in the bucket. In other words, you have a topic for that paragraph, and that's an important piece. Also remember that a single sentence cannot be a paragraph. If you're just coming up with a single sentence, it may be that it would best be added to another sentences or another paragraph, or maybe you can expound upon it. And maybe it's 27 lines long, and maybe you could cut it down. When we talk about writing with the APA format, now there's no easy way to learn about how to write with the APA format, but I have two videos here. I mean, there's lots of books. You have this wonderful book that is the APA format, which is right here. And this is one where you can look at that, and I strongly suggest you go through and you have tabs and things like that you put into it. That's a way in which you can digest what's there. I have two videos here that are about 8 or 9 minutes apiece, and what they do is they take you through the APA format. They're definitely not blockbusters. They are PowerPoint presentations where they kind of go through it. Here's the thing, and that is that as dry as it may be, I think it's a good idea to go through it, because what will happen is that this stuff will be stuck in your long-term memory. As long as you're not watching another video or TV while you're doing this, but it'll be stuck in your long-term memory. And what will happen is, as you go through and you have questions, yet you can refer back to that. Not necessarily the recording, but you could also refer to the book. There's an APA format, a 5-minute one about writing strategies using APA, which I think is a pretty good one. Really important thing, I think, is something that I created. It's not important because I created it. It's simply I think it's useful. It's a do's and don'ts of writing a literature review. Now, remember, this is a wiki that I created, and I created a wiki, and it's open for anyone to change it and to add to it. So please add to it, make whatever changes you think that are relevant. I know that you're not going to vandalize it, but I'm just saying, make the changes you think are relevant. If there are tricks that you've found, please include them on there, because I'm trying to make this kind of a melting pot where people, or a place where people can go to look for it. I would strongly suggest reading through it once now, and then once when you start writing, because once again, these are things that'll pop out. You'll notice that I have an aversion to the term utilize. You'll see what that's all about. But give that a look. Now, let's get into writing an introduction. When it comes to writing an introduction, it's important to lay. This is where you lay out the basis of what an introduction, what is important in your paper. You're going to be writing about what is the problem, what are you going to be researching, or what is the problem, why is it important to look at it, what can be done with it, what is the scope of it, how large is it, are you talking, when you're talking about using flipped classrooms, are you talking about the whole, all of education, or are you talking about English secondary classrooms? You want to talk about what is the, what are the questions that you want to research, and then you want to, this is where you list your questions. Once again, remember that when you write the introduction will indeed change as you go through writing the rest of the paper. You'll go back, and here's what you do, is you're going to write the introduction, it's going to talk about those 3 questions, and then when you get into actually writing the analysis and discussion, you would be answering those 3 questions. Now, actually, in this paper, you're only going to have 1 question. I'd like you to write your 3 questions and just talk, put a star or something like that next to the one you're going to do. Because that's how you organize your analysis and discussion. Basically, the way a paper is put together, a literature review, the introduction identifies what the problem is, tells you what you need to do, tells you what they want to search for. Methodology tells you how we went about doing it, so we can see if there's any credence in your process. Analysis and discussion says, okay, well, I went out and I was looking for the first question, and these are the studies that I found, and this is how that all makes sense. Second question, same thing. Third question, same thing. Then you get into the conclusions and recommendations, and the conclusions and recommendations, you say, okay, well, dealing with the first question, and this is where you get to put in your own point of view. Dealing with the first question, this is what I think. And this is where you get to say I. This is the first time anybody really cares about what you think. And this is and then the second question and the third question. And each one of those ones, you're organizing it by questions. In this 10-page paper, you only have 1 question to worry about. And then you have recommendations, and that has to do with what further research needs to be done, how could the things that you found be applied, in other words, that's how that works out. And then you have the references at the end. So the introduction is an important part, and I have a video on there about how to write an introduction. It's similar to what I just said, but you might find that there's some additional gems that would be useful in there. And then we talk about a research table. And I would work out using a research table like what Galvin talks about in the 7th chapter, and include that because that makes it so that it's useful. Okay. Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything, and I'd be interested to find out if you felt that this was a useful introduction to the RWLD. Thanks a lot. Bye.